Hi everyone and welcome. Today I am going to start a book that I have extremely high hopes for. This one has 5-star potential, or at least that's my prediction. So I thought, why not bring all of you along with me on this journey and on my discovery of, is this actually going to be an all-time favorite book? That book is of course The Crystal Cave by Mary Stuart. This is the first book in the Arthurian Legend retelling trilogy by her, and to say that I have high hopes is an understatement. This one won my little contest that I did a while ago, where I read the first chapter of the 8 first books in a fantasy series that I own and that I already have extremely high predictions for. And this one won. In this one, at least in the first chapter, we meet Merlin. Merlin is a young boy, he's actually the bastard of the princess, and we see him talking to his grandfather, who is extremely mean and cruel towards him, and also his uncle, who he has just met for the first time, and who seems to be nice towards him. So, to say that I'm biased is probably true, because I got some Farseer vibes, because of course in Farseer we meet Fitz as a young bastard who comes to the castle, and his grandfather, King Shrewd, is a cruel man, a ruthless man to say the least, but his uncle Verity is actually a good man. So I hope that this is going to give me all the feels. I hope that this will be a character-driven story, a coming-of-age story, and I have always wanted to read an Arthurian Legend retelling because I've never done so, and I've heard that Mary Stuart's works are one of those that you can definitely start with and that will blow you away. So very high hopes for this one. Let's just hope that I'm not really hyping this up too much. So during my journey, I will of course update you about this book, but I will also just share some other things that I find nice: cooking, walks with the dogs, board games, maybe some deco stuff. I'm just going to throw in here what happens during my week of reading this book. But let's just hope that my first update will be a positive one. Hi all, so I am now going to make some pumpkin soup, even though I am holding onions. It is pumpkin soup, trust me. But I thought to quickly just give you my first impressions, because I am around 150 pages into the book. I have finished the first part. There are 5 parts in total. They are called books, but I'm just going to call them parts because otherwise it's going to be very confusing. So I just finished the first part, which is called The Dove, and now the second part is called The Falcon. And both the Dove and the Falcon have been mentioned in the first part, so that's nice because now I feel like I have somewhat of an idea what's going to happen in the second part. And so far I am just in general really loving it. I'm so happy that I had high expectations, but that so far at least they have been met, because in the first part I was hoping that it was going to be first-person POV. I was hoping that it was going to be a coming-of-age story, very character-driven, and that's exactly what it is, because we meet Merlin when he is a very young boy, and we can see, or at least this is my expectation and my prediction, that in the first book we will see how Merlin from a young boy is becoming this powerful wizard. So this is almost an origins story, if you will, but the first part was very slow. We did not see anything happen plot-wise up until the very end, but it was just getting to know Merlin and getting connected to Merlin, and I love that. I love getting connected to these young people and seeing them grow up, and especially if they are likable characters. And I had a feeling that Merlin was a quite likable character. He is smart, of course, and he is sensible, but he is young. He is the bastard of the king, or the bastard grandson, I should say, of the king, and he does not have a favorable position in court, so he needs to learn where he is safe, what he can do inside the boundaries of his own status in court. And I really like that, getting to know his family, getting to know who his friends are, who his enemies are, and just seeing him grow up. And I do think that that establishment, that rather slow part, really helped me connect to Merlin and being just very invested with what's going to happen next. I also really enjoyed the writing style. I must say that for now, when she describes the surroundings, I sometimes have an issue with that. Not an issue, but I have trouble with picturing this, because it does have a very elaborate writing style, and I have talked about this before, but I always have an issue with picturing things in my brain. So when it's very elaborate about the surroundings, I sometimes just need to stop reading, think about it, really focus, and then I can see it. But getting further into the story, I felt like I made that switch, and now it's easier for me. So towards the end of the first part, something happened, and I feel like the second part is actually the start of the plot. Because of course, Merlin is the bastard grandson of the king. This is the earlier history of Britain, so we also have the invading Saxons, and I think that something is going to happen in that aspect. So yes, very excited to jump into the second part. For now, I was going to cut these onions while speaking, but obviously I haven't done that, so start soup, then I am going to have a walk with the dogs, and I am going to bring you guys along with me. So I have a feeling that I might have overdone it and put a little bit too many vegetables in this bowl, but we will see if I can make a soup out of this. So luckily it did fit and I was able to put some meatballs in there as well. I really do like very thick soup. So let's start and hopefully I can read at the same time. I'm already at chapter 2 of the second book, The Falcon. So I don't think that will be able, but I also have it on my e-reader, so maybe I should get that one. I just very quickly wanted to share how we spend our evenings. We like to be just a little bit lazy, I suppose. And also, quick update, I am going to start part 3 of the Crystal Cave. I'll update you first thing in the morning how I liked the second part. Bye! So I know that last time I talked to you, I said that I was going to update you about my thoughts of part 2, which is called The Falcon, but at this point I've already finished part 3, which is called The Wolf, and I am going to start part 4, which is called The Red Dragon, and of course that leaves pretty high expectations. Now, so far this is a solid read, I'm really enjoying this. This could be in my top 10 of the year, depending on how it ends, of course, but for now it does not really have all-time favorite potential, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the pluses. This is an incredibly slow story. Plot-wise, action-wise, not a lot is happening. Every time something does happen, it's extremely slow to see everything unfold, to see Merlin's thoughts, and even though that would be not really enjoyable for a lot of people, I actually absolutely adore that. I love slow stories. I love extremely character-driven stories where even small things have an impact on the character and therefore should be studied and should be gone over with great detail. So that's definitely a plus. I also really enjoy the writing style here. I love reading about Merlin, and these last 2 chapters or 2 parts of the book have been greatly enjoyable. I also really like the Roman influences here, because even though that is very fitting for this time period, I don't really see that a lot in fantasy, and I do enjoy that quite a bit. So, a lot of pluses. Merlin as a character though, he feels a little bit like a Mary Sue. And even though that is very fitting for Merlin, very fitting for this magical being that is almost closer to a god than to a human being, I feel that that's also a character that I cannot really deeply connect to. I love connecting to the underdog. And even though Merlin is actually the underdog in this story, it doesn't feel that way because he never struggles with things. He always knows exactly what he needs to do. He's almost never nervous because he knows what he is going to be almost. And that's why he's not afraid in certain situations, and that makes it very difficult for me to care for him because I want to have that underdog, that person that I can pity, and then when something finally goes their way, I'm rooting for them and I'm so happy that that happens. But with Merlin, he's such a steadfast character that it's very difficult to connect with him. Even though he is a young boy, he doesn't feel like that. He feels like a much more mature person. So like I said, that is very fitting for Merlin and for the character that he is, but it means that it's not going to be all-time favorite for me at the very least. But like I said, this is more of a prequel story. We get to know Merlin here, and I think that towards the end, with the next chapter called The Red Dragon, we are going to see also the origin of Arthur. And that does mean that towards the end, I think we will have an end of more the prologue, and then in the second book, the actual story will start. So if this will be an all-time favorite, it will more depend on the second and the third book than this first one, which is a very slow beginning of the overall story. But very much enjoying my read, and I'm going to continue with part 4, which is called The Red Dragon. After that lovely walk, we decided to play a board game, Pandemic Legacy, as you can see, but we played the normal version because Pandemic is a cooperative game. We don't really play that too often, and we wanted to try the original Pandemic before we jumped into the Legacy game and messed it up first try, and we did lose this one, so it was a good decision to first practice a little bit. So I finished part 4 and 5 of The Crystal Cave by Mary Stewart, and I definitely have some thoughts. This is also the end of the book, by the way, but I will first just more specifically talk about those 2 parts and then the book as a whole. So these last 2 parts were definitely my least favorite parts of the book, and that is because it was too close to the original legend. At the end of the book, you have a very small section of the legend, and here Mary Stewart explains what the original legend was, and you can see where she expanded upon it. And I think that she mostly expanded at the start, but towards the end everything remained the same, and I think for a legend that might work. For example, if there should be insta-love, or if there is something that happens that's unbelievable, because we have that interference of the gods, we have This Is Fate. But if you expand on that story, if you make an entire book of that story, and if you humanize some of the characters that we meet in this story, I would expect you to also make these events more logical, more realistic. I would expect that you expand more on them and maybe give them the time that they deserve. But towards the end, this story went extremely quickly, and it just didn't really make sense to me to having met the characters in previous chapters, then seeing what they did in those last 2. So for me, that was a little bit of a disappointment. Now, I must say that overall, I'm still really happy that I picked up this book. I enjoyed this book. It was a solid read, but it was not a 5-star read. And at the start of the book, I did expect that. Now, a part of it is personal preferences, and we will get into that, but a part of it is also that I do think that there were a lot of missed opportunities in this book, like I said, adapting it to present times. Now, of course, this book was written in the 70s, so that is 50 years ago, so maybe I shouldn't look at it through a modern lens, and maybe if Mary Stewart had another shot at it, she would have changed some things towards the end. But for me, this could have been better if she changed those last 3 chapters, I would say. But some personal preferences for me, I love to root for the underdog, and Merlin, at the start, he was the underdog. He was this young bastard at court who was completely dependent of other people because he did not have power. And I love that. I love rooting for the underdog. I love being invested, and when something happens to them, you feel their hurt. But you could quickly see that Merlin is this mythical figure, and he was quickly very powerful and very confident in himself. And that is something that is fitting for this story. This is something that Mary Stewart did right, but this is just something that I personally don't really like in stories. So while at the start I thought, yes, this is going to be another Fitz of course, The Realm of the Elderlings by Robin Hobb, this is just not the case. And I think that that was wrong expectations from my part. I did really enjoy the book. Like I said, I am going to continue with the rest of the series. I have them on audiobook even, so that's perfect. But unfortunately, it's not going to be an all-time favorite. I think at the start of this vlog, I said this might be in my top 10 of 2022. That's not the case, unfortunately. So still happy that I picked it up. I was a little bit hesitant because I thought it's a story that's written in the 70s. I'm going to have some trouble with the writing style, so it was intimidating on that part. But I was pleasantly surprised that the writing style, at the very least, was very fluent, and I really enjoyed that writing style. So happy that I was not too intimidated to pick it up and that it won the challenge. And like I said, I have the audiobooks, so I will probably jump into those in the new year, so 2023, and finish this series off rather quickly. Now, I have read not too many King Arthur retellings or Merlin legend retellings, but another one that I have read a couple of years ago that I think was also an historical way of looking at this that did a better job was The Lost Queen by Sidney Pike. Now, here you do not follow Merlin, you follow The Lost Queen, and I would strongly advise you that if you liked The Crystal Cave, or if you like King Arthur retellings in general, to pick this one up, because this one, for me, did a better job at it than The Crystal Cave. And this is the first one in a trilogy, by the way. The second one is out, and I think that the third and final one is coming out in 2023, so perfect time to pick this one up. Now, I also just quickly wanted to show you the two other books that I have on my TBR that are Arthur retellings. The first one is The Once and Future King by T.H. White. I think that this is very close to the original legend. I have no idea what this is, to be honest. It is a very thick book. It's also divided into 4 sub-books, just as The Crystal Cave by Mary Stuart. But yes, this is a standalone as far as I'm concerned and as far as I know. So this is one that I do hope to pick up next year. And then the other one has been on my TBR for quite a while, but I just never seem to grab it. And that is Lancelot by Giles Christian. He has written a second one, which is called Camelot, if I'm not mistaken, but both are standalones. I started this one a while ago, years at this point I think, and I loved the writing style. It's very poetic, but I just did not continue because I didn't have the time at that point I think. But definitely one that I want to pick up as well. So this was the end of the vlog. I hope that you really enjoyed it. Like I said, I was a little bit disappointed just because I had very high expectations, but in the end I was happy that I picked it up. Have you read this one? Definitely let me know in the comments down below, or do you want to pick it up? By the way, in my next vlog I am going to change the scenery here a little bit from fall to winter, so maybe if you're interested, keep your eyes open for the next vlog that will come out next week or in a couple of weeks at the latest. As always, I hope that you enjoyed this video and see you next time. Bye!